Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Children's Literature Association Conversations podcast. Uh, this month is Black History Month, and so we are interviewing two African American authors. That is our theme for the month. This event was organized through the Children's Literature Association Communications Committee and organized by myself, Dr. Tiffany A. Flowers. I am so excited about this podcast because this is something new that we've come up with. We actually did a pilot run last semester where we interviewed authors during Black YA and the Arcade during our theme during the Children's Literature Association conference. And it went over so well, and people were so excited about it that we decided to organize something formally. And so this is actually our first formal conversation. So we do look forward to having additional conversations, and I'll talk a little bit about that toward the end. But I want to go ahead and jump right in and introduce our authors, allow them to talk a little bit about their work, and then we're going to move into a Q&A where I ask the authors questions and they answer them for the audience today. So our first author is Chandra Sparks Splond. Chandra is an editor, speaker, and award-winning author and blogger. Her young adult novel, Make It Work, was named Alabama's Great Read in 2017. Spin It Like That was chosen as a popular paperback for young adults by the Young Adult Library Services Association. And her novel, The Pledge, was a young adult Library Services Association quick pick for reluctant readers. Splond is a 2019 recipient of the Orlean Beeson School of Education Learning for Life Award, and Splond is the owner of Weston Publishing LLC and Live Life Creations, a personalized gift and party boutique. So in addition to working for Kensington Publishing as a consulting editor for BET Books and Arabesque Romance, Splond has worded for Random House, Moody Publishers, Kamani Press, formerly known as BET Books, and Hyperion. She also worked for Good Housekeeping, Black and Married with Kids, Brides Noir, Wedding Pages, Newsday, The Morning Call, and Romantic Times. Denise Turney, who actually could not join us today, is a professional speaker and writer who brings more than 40 years of book, newspaper, magazine, radio, and business speaking and writing to any project. She has been listed in various entertainment and business directories, including industry leaders such as Who's Who, 100 Most Admired African American Women in Crosswalk. Denise Turney's books have appeared in Parade, Essence, Ebony, Madame Noir, We the People, The Trenton Times, The Pittsburgh Quarterly, and Obsidian Second. Turney has authored the books Portia, Long Walk Up, Spiral, Love Has Many Faces, Rosetta the Talent Show Queen, Rosetta's Great Hope, Long Walk Up, Awakened Blessings of Inner Love, Gator's Glory, and Love Pour Over Me, her new book. She is also the editor of the internationally successful literary journal, The Book Lover's Haven, and the host of one of the internet's longest running and most successful literary radio programs, Off the Shelf, which originally aired on the Rainbow Channel. She is also a formerly featured columnist with one of Michigan's largest cultural newspapers, the New Citizens Press. Ryan Joyner. Mr. Joyner is the consummate lover of reading. He can think a few activities more enjoyable. He's equally passionate about inventing new ways to make reading fascinating and more accessible to children. He makes his home in Iowa. And for more information about Mr. Joyner's books, contact him at ryanjoynerbooks@gmail.com. Mr. Joyner's two book releases are The Amazing Things That Books Can Do 1 and The Amazing Things That Books Can Do 2. So I just wanted to say thank you to our authors for joining us today. So I wanted to start out by giving the authors some time to discuss their books. So I went ahead and gave everyone the opportunity or the ability to share their screen. So I think I'm going to start with Ryan, and then I'm going to follow up with Chandra, and then we'll move straight into the Q&A.
Okay. let me just go to, okay. Uh-oh. 1 second, Dr. Flowers out. So it's shared now. Okay. Again, my name is Ryan Joyner. I'm the author of The Amazing Things That Books Can Do, books 1 and 2. I'm also a certified elementary school teacher. I teach 5th grade. Essentially, I love books. I don't want to be redundant because I feel that everyone can kind of see this. And I'm not sure how this process goes. This is kind of like my first time doing this, but I will clarify one thing. It says works selected as required textbooks during 2014 for the University of Northern Iowa. That actually ran up until COVID, actually. And so I apologize for not clarifying that, Dr. Flowers. I was probably just running. And again, so essentially, let me just go down to this next one. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to move this out. Okay, there we go. There we go. Hopefully everyone was able to see that first slide. And if not, I could go right back to it. I kind of want to jump in and, you know, talk about books, the amazing things that books can do, which is the reason why we're all here. So I don't want to take up much time. I can conclude with that. If anyone else wants to, you know, see these slides, we can definitely do that. But I'd like to definitely make room for the other authors. Thank you, Ryan Joyner.
Okay, so at this point, you can either read an excerpt of your book now, or we can move to Chandra.
Okay, okay. Oh, I'm sorry, and I know you all saw these, but this is the amazing things that books can do. And book number 1, and this is the amazing things that books can do, book number 2. And let me just kind of show you all how this is formatted. So, and I'll be really, really brief, I promise. Okay, essentially, page number 1, it's hopefully you all can see it, but books can give you the park on a rainy day. And those of us who are truly literate and avid readers, we know these things. And essentially, my pages are essentially 1 sentence long. And these are for essentially anyone who loves books. I'll give you one more page and then I'll let someone. Books can help you fly if you have no wings. Again, I think we all know this true. This is true. I definitely do. And so essentially, that's how my book goes. Thank you, Dr. Flowers, and I'll let the next author begin.
Okay, so Chandra, you can go ahead and share your screen and talk a little bit about your work.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for the invitation, Dr. Flowers. My name is Chandra Splond. I'm an author, blogger, editor, and speaker. I've published 18 books, well, 17. The 18th one is coming soon, so that number's stuck in my head. And my first book originally came out in 2004. So when I was 14 years old, I had this crazy dream that I wanted to write books, but I didn't know how that dream was going to come true. I grew up here in Birmingham, Alabama, and we didn't have access to the internet back then. And even if we did, I didn't have the know-how to research how to write a book or to get a book deal. And the other issue was that the market that I wanted to write for, which is African-American young adults, didn't exist. I think it's pretty common now for you to walk into a bookstore or a library and see book covers with people who look like you. But for me, when I was growing up, that wasn't the case. So I figured since I didn't see any of those books, that meant that I was supposed to be the one who actually wrote them. So my senior year of high school, as I was thinking about where I wanted to go to college and what I wanted to do, my mom asked me what I wanted to do with my life. And I told her that I wanted to write books. And she told me that authors didn't make any money and I needed to find a career to fall back on. So I decided to major in journalism because that was the closest that I could get to writing books. But I found that the writing was too structured for me when it came to journalism. Then my senior year of college, I ended up taking a class in copy editing. And for those of you who may not be aware of what copy editing is, if you've ever been in class and gotten a paper back from a teacher that's marked up telling you that you spelled something wrong or asking you to explain something more or anything along those lines, that's copy editing. And I found that not only did I really enjoy it, I was really good at it. So good I was offered a job in New York. So I moved to New York 2 weeks after I graduated from college. And I worked there for almost 13 years in various aspects of publishing. Then in 2004, I had my daughter, and it occurred to me that I hadn't realized my dream of writing books. And I wanted to be the type of parent who, rather than telling my daughter she could do whatever she wanted to do, I wanted to be able to show her that she really could do whatever she wanted to do. So I challenged myself to write a book before my daughter turned a year old. I completed my first manuscript a month after my daughter's first birthday. Once I did that, I challenged myself to land a book deal before my daughter turned 2. And I received the offer for my first book, Spin It Like That, 2 months after her second birthday. And the reason I like to share this story with people is to show, each and every one of you who are listening or tuned in right now, that I'm no different than any one of you. I was just a kid who grew up with dreams. And just like my dreams came true, yours can come true too. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it'll happen overnight. It actually took 22 years for my dream to come true. But it never would have happened if I would have given up. So that's just my ultimate message to people, to always, always, always pursue your dreams and to never give up. And if you like, I can go ahead and read an excerpt from one of my books. Okay. So my latest book is called Speak. Hopefully you can see the cover. And it's the story of 15-year-old Kobe Means, who has zero desire to follow in his father's footsteps. His father's a professional football player based here in Birmingham. And the story takes place during the time of COVID. So they've been locked in the house together as a result of the pandemic. And, as a lot of people are finding out, like, he's just sick of being around his family. So I decided to write this book because I thought it would be interesting to look at the pandemic from a teen's perspective. So within the story, Kobe comes up with this bright idea that to get away from his dad, he'll go to summer school. Not necessarily because he needs to go, but again, it's just his way of getting out of the house. So in the scene that I'll read for you, we'll get a chance to meet Kobe. So, my name is Mr. Merriweather, the teacher said in this deep voice, and he trailed his finger under what he'd written on the board. I'll be your teacher for the summer. I sat up straighter, kind of intrigued. I can't explain it, but the thought of Mr. Merriweather teaching the class had me excited. I'd never had a Black male teacher before, so that was kind of cool. Before we begin, I'd like for each of you to stand and introduce yourself. Man, I hate when people do that, Dennis muttered as he slid lower in his seat. Mr. Merriweather cut his eyes at Dennis. Did you say something, young man? Dennis sat up straighter. I was saying I can't understand you with that. He pointed to Mr. Merriweather's mask. Can everyone else understand me? Mr. Merriweather asked, looking around like he really wanted to know. A few kids nodded. Maybe you should cut a hole in it like I did, Dennis said, proudly holding up his massacred mask. Several kids cracked up and Dennis looked around confused. I waited for Mr. Merriweather to embarrass him like I knew some of my teachers from Tate Academy would do. But instead he pulled a disposable mask and a clear sealed package from his backpack and handed it to Dennis before he explained to the class why wearing masks and not cutting them was an important way to stop the coronavirus. I thought the way he handled the entire situation was cool. And apparently Dennis did too, because he put on the mask without complaining. And he actually looked like he was paying attention when Mr. Merriweather reminded us we were going to introduce ourselves. I had just started to introduce myself when the classroom door flew open and this girl rushed in, her cheeks flaming. "I'm so sorry I'm late," she said, looking around the room until her gaze landed on Mr. Merriweather, who's propped on top of a desk near the window. "I overslept." "You could sleep over with me anytime," a boy behind me said. I didn't like his way of saying it, but I had to agree with his unspoken sentiment. This girl was fine. She looked to be about 5'4", a few inches shorter than my 5'8" height, and her yellow sundress was fitting her just right, but not in a skanky way, and it was coordinated with her yellow and green mask. "Kobe," Mr. Merriweather said, snatching me back to reality. "Please continue." "My name is Kobe Means," I said, purposely not using my middle name. "He means Kobe Bryant Means," Dennis said from his seat across from me. A couple of kids burst out laughing. "Your parents really named you Kobe Bryant," someone said, and more kids cracked up as they made the connection that I had the same name as a late basketball legend. I glared at Dennis annoyed. All he had to do was keep his mouth shut and this conversation wouldn't even be happening right now. If that wasn't bad enough, he pulled his mask down to do it. Thankfully, only his nose was uncovered. "So, do you like sports?" Mr. Merriweather asked, trying to get the class back on track. "Of course he does. His dad is Bryant Means," Dennis volunteered. "The mean machine who plays for the Birmingham Knights is your daddy?" someone yelled from behind me. "Can I get his autograph?" a guy near the back of the room asked. "Can I get his number?" This girl who had to be pushing 22 looked from behind a compact mirror long enough to ask. I sighed in frustration. This whole morning was not going the way I had pictured it in my head. "Yes, my dad is Bryant Means," I said, figuring I needed to go ahead and admit it since he'd probably be picking me up from school. "But I don't like sports." It was the first time I'd said the words aloud, and even though I was getting weird stares, it felt good to admit sports weren't my thing. "So what do you like to do?" Mr. Merriweather asked. I shrugged. "Other than reading, I really don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out," I said. "There's nothing wrong with that," Mr. Merriweather said, nodding at me. "I was still trying to figure it out when I was your age too. You'll find your way."
Thank you so much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you both. So I wanted to just go right into some of the questions that I prepared. I wanted you to talk a little bit and share something about your book that isn't in the blurb or excerpts that you read. So please share something.
Mr. Joyner, are you going first? You can go first.
Ladies first, Splond, or unless you want me to, but really it's you can go first if you like. I could definitely go first.
I think for me, one thing that you wouldn't find in the blurb is that it's important that kids see themselves in books. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times we do books, that focus on glamorizing teenage life or whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. I specifically wrote this story because about a young man who doesn't like all the flash and glamour. Like he enjoys reading. Mm-hmm. There are more kids like that exist. And just like the flashy kids want to see themselves in books, everyday kids do too. So that's one thing that you definitely wouldn't find on the back cover.
Okay, thank you.
And Dr. Flowers, I really want to apologize. I want to just say I didn't get a chance to really not only introduce myself, but talk about my book, the instructions you told me and what inspired it. So I apologize. The whole, the press kit threw me off. So hopefully we can get around to that. But anyway, brilliant question, Dr. Flowers. What you won't find in my blurb and what you won't find in the book, I believe, is that my book actually grows with you. And I have a funny story. So 2 years ago, I was teaching third grade And my fifth graders now were my third graders. And this little brilliant boy, I was introducing my book to and they had read it in third grade. They just kind of forgot. And one of my smartest boys said, Mr. Joyner, what did he say? He said, that's a baby book or a generic book or something like that. And I found it hilarious. And so we laughed together. So everybody was like, this is a good book, everybody except him. So when he went to recess, I saw him just, turning the pages and reading the books. And essentially, I said, I thought it was a generic book. And he said, well, that was from a third grade perspective. He said, it's a great book. Mr. Joyner, this is a good. And I said, I thought it was generic. And he said, well, that was from a third grade perspective. So I think my book essentially grows with you. Like I said, they used it at the University of Northern Iowa. And a lot of people said, hey, all adults should read this book and stuff like that. So I think it's good for all ages.
So that brings me to my next question. When we think about the children that we're writing for and the children that we're preparing these books for, I want you to talk a little bit about the culturally relevant significance of your books. Why are these books culturally relevant? We know that we already have African-American characters in the book, but why are they relevant to children?
I think for me, again, specifically with Speak and with all my books, like I want to explore life from a teen's perspective. Mm-hmm. A lot of things we as adults might kind of take for granted, or, we are removed from being a teenager, so we've kind of forgotten. Or in all honesty, I mean, life is so much different now. Put the pandemic aside, like being a teen is a whole different thing. Most of us on this call, I'm assuming, didn't have cell phones growing up. We didn't have social media that was, publicizing every little thing we did, good, bad, or ugly. Right. So we weren't being bullied online. Those things didn't exist for us. Right. Those are things we have to talk about. And a lot of times, that's not saying that parents aren't doing their jobs, because a lot of them are doing amazing jobs. But a lot of times, just like when I was a kid, my mama would say something, it'd go in one ear and out the other. Sometimes it's easier to get a point across in a book. A parent can say the same thing, but just reading it in a book and seeing somebody your age experiencing it and coming up with solutions to it, kids will find that beneficial. So that's what I try and do in my stories. Help them see themselves and look at life in a different way. And also, if you as an adult are reading it, give you insight into what a teenager's life looks like now. It's not what you grew up, the way you grew up. It really isn't.
Right. Okay.
So, wow, another brilliant, question. So essentially, I wrote from my personal experience. I grew up on the west side of Chicago, and I swear I don't recall seeing libraries. It was just like a concrete jungle to me. And I moved to Iowa when I was 10. So when I wrote this book, I was still this little boy on the west side of Chicago. And, you just didn't see these great literary opportunities. And so I'll just give you I just wanted, and I remember my mother, she told me, all the children would be outside playing and she wouldn't let me go outside. And she said, I was so afraid for you and I didn't want anything to happen. It was so dangerous. So I wanted children to know, if you grew up anything like me, especially children of color, and you were confined to the apartment, books could still take you around the world. You could solve any problem. For example, I just want to read 3 pages really quickly. Books can get you off track books can get you back on track when you're off track. I really want parents and children to know these things. You really don't need, in some cases, you don't need a pill. You don't need, you can just really pick up a book, and And I wasn't taught that as a child. Another 2 really quick pages. It'll only take me a second. Another one of my most favorite ones, and I was kind of alienated as a child. Books can make you cool when others think you're weird. I truly believe that, because books can be your friends. You don't need external validation. Just be yourself, and books can kind of do that. Final page, I promise. Books can help you escape when you're in the midst of madness. When I wrote this page right here, I was thinking of this little girl who may live, I don't know, a lot of things happen to little children, living in drug houses, being sexually abused and stuff like that, and no way out. And you guys know where I'm going with this, but the message that I wanted to give all children, especially children of color, that, when there's no hope or no way out, you can find a way out in a book. And essentially, that's the message that I wanted to.
So I think about how you all are writing these books, and it's so interesting to me because, I've read both of your work, and it's just, I think about how your work is so reflective of what, is going through the minds of children right now, what their experiences are, as we talked about. So I want you to talk a little bit about, or my next question is, I want you to talk a little bit about the significance of the title of your work, or titles of your work. Why would you title your work the way that you did? What was the significance behind that?
For me,
first.
For me, with my book Speak, I thought it just spoke, no pun intended, to the importance of finding your voice. One line I like to use, especially with kids, is you have to learn to speak up for yourself, even if butterflies are doing backflips in your belly while you're doing it. So for Kobe in my book, he had to figure out who he is. So it's a coming of age book, and not be afraid to say that, which can be scary. I mean, a lot of times for kids, talking to adults, especially if you're a parent, like standing up to them or talking to them, can be scary. But at some point you have to find your voice, and it doesn't mean you have to be disrespectful or rude. But you have to find your voice. So that was the relevance of Speak for me. Okay.
All right.
I would have to say the amazing things that books can do. We're all readers. I think I often tell my children and students, those who do not read, you're essentially, I'll just say this: books can really do amazing things. And I just want to give 3 examples, if you guys don't mind. Books can give you light when it's dark. We all know this. Books can really do amazing things. I don't think children always know this. For example, know this. One of my favorites is books can be your friends when no one else is around. I mean, like I said, I grew up strange. I grew up weird and stuff like that. I mean, I was strange in every way, shape, or form, but I always felt at home in books. And I'll just give this last example. Books can open locked doors when you have no keys. We all know the opportunities that reading breeds, and I just don't think children get that message that much. And so essentially, I'll conclude with books. Reading can really do amazing things, and I just wanted to embed that in the brains of children and whoever else would read. Excuse me.
So my next question is, how difficult was it for you to publish your work? Was it a journey? Was it fairly easy? Did you have, a roadmap, mentors? How did that work for you? And the reason that I ask that question is because oftentimes when I interview authors, and I interview authors quite a bit, I end up listening to their conversations about how difficult it is, particularly for authors of color, to either get book contracts or to start their own companies or to publish their books on their own, just independently. So can you talk a little bit about your journey? Mhm.
I think for me at this stage in my career, I'm on book 17.
Okay.
So it's a little easier for me because I've done it before, so I kind of have my system, my roadmap in place. When I originally started, my first 3 books were traditionally published.
Okay.
And even for me, that was a little different than most people's journey because I worked in publishing. So,
Okay.
I had connections that a lot of people didn't have.
Right.
So that worked out for me. For authors or, people who are looking to publish, now there are so many amazing different opportunities. If you don't publish traditionally, you can always independently publish now, which is what I've done. Now, all my books, I've gotten my rights back to my first 3 books. So all my books, I started my own publishing company and I do it myself. Amazon makes it extremely easy to, do ebooks, audiobooks, print book, whatever you want to do, you can essentially do it all through Amazon, which, some people may have an issue with that because of the monopoly they have. But they've made it easy for a lot of people to get their work out there that you may not have necessarily known about. So the process can be hard, it can be overwhelming, it can be intimidating. In addition to being an author, I'm also an editor. I've been an editor much longer than I've been an author. So I've worked with everyone from New York Times bestselling authors to aspiring authors. Right. So I've seen people who've had traditional deals. I've seen people, who are trying to independently publish. And it can be a journey. Traditional publishing may not be for everyone. Independent publishing may not be for everyone. So you have to do your research and figure out what the pros and cons are and get an understanding of what works best for you. Yeah, that's it. So we'll turn it over to Ryan now. I don't want to take up all the time.
Right.
So, when I first started dreaming of writing and stuff like that, I wanted Miss Chandra's life, oh man.
You sure about that?
New York Times, author conferences, I wanted all that. And unfortunately, I sent it, to 2 people and maybe 2 or 3 people. And I got a hit once, this guy in Maryland or something like that. And I wasn't really sure about what he was talking about. So essentially, since things weren't moving fast enough, I found out about self-publishing. And I was like, what? You mean I can pay somebody to get this message out and bring this vision? And I also helped to illustrate it. I would sketch and stuff like that. And so basically, I paid someone to publish my book. And so that was easy. What was hard is for me, like Chandra was saying, that route was really difficult. It was frustrating. I was naive, thinking, oh man, everybody's going to be excited about this book. And so when it wasn't moving fast enough, I just essentially paid someone. And I was really happy with that. And I, Chandra, all authors know that you never know where your book is going to go and, and stuff like that. So I've been happy with the journey. So.
Okay. And I know that's a major issue right now. We've seen a lot of conversations via Twitter about that. A lot of authors that are established authors who, best-selling authors, they're looking at things and they're saying, well, if I have 2 million followers, why should I pay somebody, to do this book? So I wanted you to talk a little bit about what you learned during the process of writing, not just the publishing part, but what did you learn about yourself as a writer?
I think for me, I had to realize that, you know, writing is a job. People talk all the time, oh, I want to write a book. I had this idea for a book in my head. But to actually sit down and write, you know, a 250, 300 page book, it takes discipline. It takes, you know, you're going to have days where you feel like you don't have anything to write.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to learn, like I said, to treat it as a job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, are there days that I didn't want to go to my 9 to 5? Absolutely. Did I get up and go because I had bills to pay? Absolutely. So the same is true with writing, you know, a book. There have been so many days when I have sat down in a computer, not in the mood to write, just not feeling it. And I'm thinking like, okay, water needs to eat. Like, I need to put some words on a paper. So how am I going to make this happen? So I've literally found myself typing so many days. I don't know what I'm going to write right now. Like just literally typing those words, and something about that gets the flow going for me. But you treat writing like the job that it is. I mean, and it's not, everything you write is not going to always be amazing. It's not going to be, you know, perfect the first time out. But that's part of the process. And people don't take into account too, part of the job of writing is not actually sitting down physically writing. A lot of mine comes, since I write for teenagers, clearly I'm not a teenager. In order to get into their world, I have to be around them and, you know, be aware of the things that they're doing. So that means, you know, hanging out sometimes. Thankfully, I have a teenage daughter now, so it's a little easier for me, you know, listening in on conversations, watching shows that they watch, following people they may follow on social media, just to get an idea of what it is they like or what they're doing, so that I can write about that intelligently in a book. People don't give enough credit to that being part of the writing process. They just think it's all sitting in front of a keyboard, and there's much more to it than that.
Right. Okay.
You know, I would say I learned really two really important things. I guess the most important thing I read, that I learned, I wanted to write love stories and, the best-selling novel and stuff like that. And I remember just really getting frustrated, like, I'm this very verbose person, and how come anything isn't coming? And one day I was just relaxing, and it hit me that, and you read this all the time in books, that write about what you love. And I was like, okay, what do I love? What do I love? I'm always in Barnes and Noble, and I was thinking about, I love to read, and I'm like, a book about reading, and that was it. And so essentially, whatever you're passionate about, it may sound corny, and it might not be popular, but if you're passionate about it, write about it, and it's fun. I enjoyed writing about it, and it kind of, the other lesson that I learned is, and this is one of my most favorite parts as well, I think all authors, we're miniature medias. We are the media. We create these realities, and so we shape and we mold as well. And and that's very powerful. So I would have to say those are the most important things that I learned. If you're passionate about fly fishing, write about that. If you're passionate about shoe tying, write about that, because it should be, I think, for me, I think it should be fun. And so that's what I learned.
And Dr. Flowers, may I also add one other important thing that I've learned and realized over the years is that great writers are also great readers. I meet so many people who say, oh, I want to write a book, but I don't like reading. Like, what? Yeah, that they don't go together, so you have to read, even if you're reading stuff and realizing things that you don't like, you have to know what exists. You have to kind of know what the writing rules are before you try and break them. So yeah, great writers are absolutely great readers.
Mhm.
Dr. Flowers, I love her point. Could I expound if you don't
Sure.
mind?
Mhm.
You know, Chandra, that is a really, really great point. And what I wanted to, the most important thing I kept telling myself and my goal, I wanted my books to be psychologically sound. You know what I mean? And you're right, Chandra. I just think that readers, you know, are more apt to be psychologically sound in their literature as opposed to, you know, something that's totally inappropriate or something. I don't know if I'm conveying this right, but my goal was to be psychologically sound. I didn't want anybody to say, oh, and a lot of people say in children's, how is that possible? A book can do that, you know, but I know that it's still psychologically sound if you really think about it. And I think, Chandra, that reading, heavy reading, strong reading, really breeds that. I totally agree with you.
Okay. So I just wanted to say, I really enjoyed our talk this evening. I think you all did a great job of really conveying what your work is about, as well as answering very difficult questions, because I know I can come up with some pretty tough questions to ask my authors. But I always want to make sure that I'm asking things that are engaging and really get you to think about how you put your work together, as well as how you convey it to an audience. So I wanted to ask you all to stick around, but I wanted to go ahead and close out our recording. And I wanted to let everyone know that this does conclude our first Conversations podcast. Please make sure that you look out for our next email invitation. We will be discussing the big book banning controversy that's happening in publishing and in schools and libraries next time. And after that, our next podcast will focus on Black and Brown writers who are writing speculative and science fiction in Georgia. All right, take care.